Hi, so this session is on rearranging a linear equation into this form, y equals mx plus c. And the reason why we have to know this important skill is because in this form we can see the gradient and we can see the y-intercept just by looking at it. And that's why it's important. So with our first question, we can see that this is in the form of y equals mx plus c. So straight away, I know my gradient is a positive 2 or 2 over 1. So a rise of 2 and a run of 1, and the y-intercept is a positive 1. So if I had to quickly draw this, just as a quick sketch, without using any method, without using a table of values or finding the x and y intercepts, I will quickly draw my y and x axis. Because it's a positive 2, I know I'm going up the hill. It's a positive gradient. 2 isn't very steep, but it's starting to get a bit steep. My y-intercept is positive 1. So I can locate that on my graph. So just say positive 1 was here. So my line will be passing through that point and it will look something like this. Positive gradient going up the hill. So as a quick sketch, just by looking at my equation, that is what my line will look like. So let's just practice on how to make sure we can rearrange any linear equation into this form. So with our first one, we notice, first of all, is it a linear equation? Yes, it is, because the powers of y and x are positive 1. So straight away we know it's a linear equation. We want it in this form. So if it helps, write it down somewhere, y equals mx plus c. So we want the x and its coefficient first, and then the number on its own, the constant, on the end. So y, you can see, is not on its own. The problem is this negative 2. And all you're going to do is bring it to this side here. And to do that, what's the opposite of minus 2? It is 2 plus 2, or plus 2x. Sorry, it's minus 2x with plus 2x. That becomes a 0, but it is now on this side here. So that's what we have. We've got y equals 3 plus 2x. And I've pretty much achieved it. Y is on its own. Everything else is on this side, and it's been simplified. There's nothing else we can simplify. So just always check that as well. But you notice that the 2x is last. And it's better to have it written first so it's more clear to you. So now I'm going to rewrite this just by switching the 3 and the positive 2x. So because it's a positive 2x, I can just write 2x. The positive is now invisible. And that's a positive 3, not a minus 3. So I write plus 3. And these two equations, well, all of these are the same thing. It's just that I've put my 2x first and then my 3. And now I can clearly see what my gradient is. Gradient m is equal to a positive 2, and my y-intercept c is a positive 3. And once again, we could do a quick sketch of this now. Got y and x. The y-intercept is positive 3. It's a positive gradient, so going up the hill, and there we go. Now with our next question, now don't be scared of fractions. This is just saying 5 over 2, and then there's the x there. The x can be on top, but this is just a fraction that's a decimal. So it will be 2 point something, okay? So if it helps, you can write this as a decimal, okay? But it's better to leave it in fraction form because the question has been given to us as fraction. But what I'm saying is if I have just say a half x, we know a half is 0.5. So I can write it like this, or 0.5x. It's actually the same thing. And we've got to get the x, in this case, on the other side. So we'll leave it in fraction form. You notice that this is the problem here. We want y to be by itself. So we've got to bring that to this side here. And to do that, do the opposite operation. We've got a minus 5 over 2x, so we have to plus it. So plus it on both sides. Well, so plus 5 over 2x, that will become a 0. But we must plus 5 over 2x on this side. So we end up with y equals, there's a minus 2 here, so minus 2 plus 5 over 2, and x can sit in the middle or on top. Now, we've pretty much done it, but we know that y equals mx plus c, we have the x first. So let's just rearrange the minus 2 and the positive 5 over 2x to make it exactly in that form. So all we have to do now is put the positive 5 over 2 first, so positive 5 over 2x is first. We know there's still a plus there, it's just invisible. And that minus 2, we write minus 2 on the end. And there we go. We have our equation in the form of y equals mx plus c. My gradient, so m is 5 over 2 and it's positive. My y-intercept is a negative 2. Okay, and as a quick sketch, we can draw a y and x axis. So c is negative 2. So the y-intercept's down there. Positive gradient, so we're going up the hill. Gradient isn't going to be too steep. So, and that's a rough sketch. Passing through the y-intercepts, and we know positive means going up the hill. Now with our next equation, you notice that we have 2y equals 2x plus 3. It's almost in the form of y equals mx plus c. Okay, so the problem is that 2. Now, we notice to get y on its own, that 2 is joined to the y by an invisible times. So the opposite of 2 times y is to divide by 2, and it will cancel out. But of course, we must divide this side by 2. Now, it's extremely important that you also divide the 2x by 2 and also the 3 by 2. They both get a turn to be divided by 2. And that's because these two terms are separated by that plus. So they both get a turn each. If there was no plus separating them, well, there'll just be one term and you divide it by 2 only. So we end up with y equals, and of course simplify where you can. That 2 and 2 can cancel out to give us a 1. And 3 over 2 unfortunately can't be simplified, so we can just leave it in fraction form. So we end up with x plus 3 over 2. And if this part confused you, remember if we have, I'll just write it down here again, if we have 2 over 2 and the x in this case was on top, it's the same as saying this, 2 over 2 and the x sitting in the middle, okay? The x can either sit on the middle or sit on top because really it's sitting on top. And the 2 and 2 you simplify like a normal fraction. So for this question, the gradient was actually a 1. We know there's a 1 there. And the y-intercept is 3 over 2, or 1.5. Now with our next question, it's first of all, is it a linear equation? Yes, it is. There's a 1 there and a 1 there, so that's fine. And we want it in the form of y equals mx plus c. So the first thing we get rid of is not this 2 that's next to the y, it's the x. Okay, we want y to stay on this side, so always get rid of the variable or number that's the furthest away from the y. In this case, it's the x. This x is a positive x. To get rid of it and put it on the other side, we simply minus x. That's a 0, and we minus x on this side. So we're left with, that minus 2 is still there, so minus 2y equals 8 minus x. Now, the last thing we have to do is get rid of this minus 2. And once again, because it's saying minus 2 times y, we divide by minus 2. That cancels out. And please make sure the 8 is divided by minus 2 and also that negative x is divided by a minus 2. And this is where you have to be very careful with negatives and positives. So I'm going to write it out again so it's not so squished up. So y equals, we've got 8 divided by a negative 2 and a takeaway there. And we have an x divided by a negative 2. And you can see how these two negatives here will make a positive. So first of all, 8 divided by a negative 2, that is just going to give us a negative 4. That was pretty easy. Now here, there's no number on top to simplify with the 2. But you have to see that these two negatives are actually sitting together, because that negative on the bottom can just be sitting in the middle. So we end up with a positive x over 2. Okay? And now, all we're going to do is write the x plus 2 first. So I'll squeeze it down here. So we end up with y equals, it's a positive x plus 2. So positive x over 2. Not x plus 2. And then a minus 4. That's a minus 4, so we write minus 4. And there it is, y equals mx plus c. So to show our gradient, if the question asks you to state the gradient, you would have to do this. So therefore, the gradient is, well, m is equal to a half. We know there's a 1 next to the x, and a 1 over 2 is a half. And the y-intercept c is a negative 4. Okay, and there we go. Okay, our next equation, it probably looks more tricky because we have a fraction, but you should be fine with your fraction skills, and it shouldn't be a problem. And if you need to practice your fraction skills, that's fine. Just watch lessons on fraction skills. Now, the first thing we get rid of, we've got a 5y here, so there's 2 steps involved. We've got to get rid of this 5, but also this negative half. and that will go first. Opposite of minus half is 2 plus half, and plus half on this side. So we are left with 5y equals minus 10x plus half. So all we have done is move the negative half to this side. Now, we're not finished yet because that 5 has to also disappear. So we divide by 5, that cancels out. Now, please make sure we divide everything here by 5. Here, it's quite straightforward, divide by 5. Now, for this half, you can actually write it like this, divide by 5, but it does look a bit confusing. So we'll just rewrite that. That was a 2. I want you to write, in this case, whenever you have a fraction and you're dividing by a number, write it like this, divided by half, and you can clearly see your fraction skills. When we're dividing with a fraction, you've got to turn division to times. So all you got to remember is if you're dividing by a number, it's the same as flipping this number. So 5 over 1, we flip it and turn this to times. So dividing by 5 is the same as multiplying by 1/5. That's a trick you can remember. So we end up with y equals, we'll simplify this in a second. So minus 10x over 5 plus, and a half, so here we ended up with a half times a fifth. A half times a fifth gives us 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 5 is 10, so 1/10. So we end up with 1 over 10. Okay, this was just using your basic fraction skills. So a half divided by 5 is the same as saying a half times 1 over 5, which gives us 1/10. And of course, you have your calculator to help you. Now, it's not complete because I can see the 10 and 5, they can be simplified. And we can see there's a negative here, only one negative, no negative on the bottom, so we'll have a negative gradient. So divide 10 and 5, so we end up with, well, 10 divided by 5 is just 5. Or 5 divided by 5 is 1, 10 divided by 5 is 5. So our final equation will be y equals, it's a negative gradient, negative 5x plus 1/10. Okay, and we can see to state our gradient, I'll just do it up here, m is negative 5, a negative gradient going down the hill, and c, which is our y-intercept, is 1/10. Okay, and that as a decimal is just 0.1. Now for this linear equation, you notice that we have brackets. So of course, like when you normally solve an equation, always get rid of your brackets first by expanding. So 2 times x and 2 times 1. Now, we end up with 2x, 2 times 1 is 1, plus, sorry, 2 times 1 is 2, so plus 2, there's still a minus y there, equals 3. Now just check, is there anything we can simplify on this side? No, there isn't. So now we have to get y by itself. And the problem is, there are a few things we have to do. And you can actually see how many steps involved. There's the 2x that has to go, that positive 2 that has to go, and also that negative. So to make y by itself, there are 3 steps involved. And the first one, you can actually get rid of the 2x first or the 2. But we'll get rid of this 2x first because it's on this side. And it's a positive 2x, so we minus 2x. So that becomes 0 and minus 2x on that side. So what we have now is 2, it's a positive 2, which can be now invisible, the positive, minus y equals 3 minus 2x. Okay, now what we have to do is get rid of this 2 here. It's just a number 2, and you can see this will be simplified with this 3 on this side. So to get rid of a positive 2, we minus 2 on this side and minus 2 on that side. This is gone now from there. So we end up with minus y equals, you can see we have 3 minus 2, which is 1. So if you can't see that, you can write it out again. But 3 minus 2 is just a 1, and then minus 2x. So that was a 1. And we're almost there. Now that y is still not by itself because of that negative. And we know that's really a negative 1. So we divide by a negative 1, that cancels out. But please make sure you divide this one by a negative 1, and also this 2x divided by a negative 1. So what we're left with is y equals, now 1 divided by a negative 1 is just negative 1. And 2 negatives, one on top and one on the bottom, make a positive. And 2 over 1, we could just write it as 2 and then the x. Okay? And we're pretty much done. This is in the form of y equals mx plus c. I can see the gradient and the y-intercept, but we can rewrite it so it's more clear. So to have the gradient mx first, we have y equals, that's a positive 2x, so we have positive 2x, the positive is now invisible, and that's a minus 1, so we write minus 1. And there we have it. So our gradient m is a positive 2, our y-intercept is a negative 1. And once again, you can quickly sketch this. So we have y and x. Gradient is positive, so we're going up the hill. The y-intercept is negative 1, so there's negative 1. And you can quickly sketch this. And going up the hill, sorry, we're supposed to pass through that point, and there we go. So keep practicing, and eventually you'll find it really easy. Thank you.